All right. I'm so excited. Dave and Kevin, founders of Speedland, we're here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm so excited for this conversation. And I want to just let you guys know how much I appreciate your time. For anybody listening, it's been a long week. The shoes are dropping, shoes are delivering, and I know how it is being an entrepreneur and a business owner and wearing all of those different hats. So just want to tell you guys how much I appreciate it because I know how it is. Yeah. I'm super excited for this conversation, though. I am a huge fan of your product. I'm a fan of you guys. I'm a fan of your brand. I'm a fan of your mission. I was telling you guys earlier when we were up kind of getting the tour, I feel like I'm kind of fangirling today and taking pictures of a warehouse and things like that. But what I'd love to do, if you guys don't mind, I want to hear this backstory because I know that you guys have a long history, both of you, in what I'll call kind of the performance footwear industry. And I also think it's really interesting that you guys have worked together for, different brands for several decades and things like that. But I'm fascinated with the business side of it. And I want to hear kind of that journey of, when you started thinking about, hey, maybe we should start our own company. Maybe we should start designing our own shoes. How did all of this happen? How did all this come to fruition? What's the, what was day one like?
Well, let's see, where do I want to start? I mean, the quick synopsis, Dave and I met working at Nike. We were both in Nike basketball at the time. I was working on the innovation side of things, and Dave was working on inline design. And Nike was a great place to be at that time. We were just kind of on fire in basketball, and there was a lot of innovation happening, a lot of really talented people that we were surrounded by that made it just such a rich learning environment. And so I think we both learned a ton, got a great experience there. I was also in Nike soccer for a good portion of my time there, which was also a really exciting place to be. We moved on. We wound up both being at Puma, and I was in the Germany office. Dave was in the Boston office, so we worked really closely together on coordinating creative direction and line reviews and things like this. And so our first kind of intentional move together was to Under Armour. I was on the innovation side, Dave on the creative direction and footwear leadership side. And so we, worked at a brand that was really small and kind of took an apparel brand into footwear in a major way. And at the end of that, I guess, we had seen three big companies and how they worked. And we said, well, it's probably a good time for us to try doing something our own way. And we both are very much about performance footwear. If there was a theme throughout our careers, I think both of us had really focused on that. Dave had a lot more experience in, let's say, lifestyle side of things than I did, but we met on the kind of performance side, and it was a question of looking at the market. Where did we want to spend time? Who do we want to spend time with? What customer is underserved? And where can we apply this technical knowledge that we've acquired over the years? And trail running became our focus out of that, hey, this consumer is usually getting road running technology that's taken down after a few years, and we saw an opportunity to make better product. We kind of started out saying, what if we don't start with a price point? What if we say, let's build the best product we know how and start there and let the product price itself, which is 180 from how it's done at the big brands, and put the athlete at the center of everything we do. Find the right athletes, listen to what they say, build the product for what they're trying to do. And we just saw what's happening in ultra running is edge of human performance, and we love that stuff. And so being a part of that community, supporting those athletes, solving these really tricky problems for those athletes was something we could really build a brand around. So long-winded way of saying that's how we got here, but it's been an interesting journey for both of us.
It's interesting too, because from a personal perspective, you both had what I'll call made it in terms of your kind of corporate careers and the trajectory of corner offices or wherever, and I'm saying that metaphorically, but very sincerely, these incredibly long resumes of successful careers. So I'm curious, what was the primary emotion when you decided to go out on your own? I mean, was it tell me how that felt when you kind of walked away from all that into this unknown world.
I mean, yeah, it was a jump. I mean, we didn't really know what to expect, but we had already done the other, so it was kind of like, it's kind of that thing, if you don't change, you don't grow kind of thing. And so figured, like, if we weren't, it really came to a time in our life where I feel like if we didn't try it, we were never going to try it, you know? And so it's like, okay, here's the time, makes sense. We had talked about it, you know, so it was like, okay, let's just make the jump and let's see what we, you know, happens here. Probably helped that we were both kind of doing it together. I think if we didn't do it together, it'd probably be a lot harder, and definitely a lot harder now. But we've, in retrospect, you know, all the stuff we've dealt with over the last few years. But that's why people, I think, always say, make sure you have a partner in when you start a business, because you just go through a lot of stuff.
Right.
You need somebody to bounce ideas
It's
off.
scary.
A battle buddy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really a desire, you know, you got to get out of your comfort zone, and that's always a little bit of a scare of some kind, right? And so, you know, that was something that we had to accept. And I think we were lucky in the sense that we had fathers who both were entrepreneurs, so we'd been close to that in a way. And I think that's something you learn, that not everybody gets a chance to see that and sort of intrinsically know what that's like or see it up close. And so we shared that, I think, and that led us to have that itch of like, well, if we're going to do it, we better do it. You know, we'd had pretty long careers already. We weren't getting any younger. And so it was kind of a now or never thing. And I think both had that drive to want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I totally agree. And yeah,
because I mean, it's comfortable to stay in a big corporation. Like,
Yeah,
we could have done that. We probably could have stayed around and you know, the classic ride off into the sunset. But I don't know. There's just something, you get to a point where you're like, okay, I don't want to do the same thing over and over. And if you have that itch of like, I kind of want to do my own thing, or I wonder if this would work. You know, I have this idea. And eventually got to scratch it, I think.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got to that point.
and take the lead.
And I would say when we were allowed, I mean, we'd made the jump, but there were some things that were familiar to us in the sense, like, we were doing quite a bit of consulting at the beginning, and that's pretty familiar to us. That's, you know, we were doing design work, development work, engineering work, like, so that, I don't want to say made the bridge a little bit easier, but it definitely, like, we were doing something that was familiar.
Felt a little familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, you know, and it also had, it allowed some income to come in. So it wasn't like we were just completely, like, not bringing income in while we were losing money along the way.
Right. I relate to it so much because I'd worked for 11 years for a media-backed agency, and I had kind of gotten to the point where I feel like I was hitting that ceiling, so to speak. And I will never forget, I had my resignation letter typed up, and I could not hit send. I just couldn't do it. And my dad actually drove down from Heber, Utah, met me in Durango, because he knew I was, like, you know, having this existential crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's sitting in the recliner. I was in so much fear. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, like, just paralyzed with my laptop open and, you know, ready to hit send. And he leaned forward and he said, "If you don't hit send, you'll always ask what if." And I was like, oh my goodness. And then I hit send, and then I'll never forget, you know, a couple weeks later, I got my first client, and it was just, like, you know, enough that at least my mortgage is going to be paid, and literally celebrating in the car, and, you know, all of that stuff. So I just think that moment for you guys, I think a lot of people don't see the risk that was involved. You know, to your point of, it was safe. You know, you kind of had the safe gigs, but also that level of familiarity with the industry. And
I mean, the what if, I think that's an interesting way to put it, because I think neither one of us wanted to get to, you know, into our 80s and look back and be like, why didn't we do that?
And wonder,
30 years ago or whatever it was, you know. So I think that was a driving factor for us, for sure.
Did you already have an idea for the product? Because and you know, and I'm relatively new to the ultra space. I've been running, road running for 10 years. I've been running ultras for 2 years probably. And it is a bit of it's a very unique, you know, approach. And obviously it's a very performance driven product, but I'm kind of curious, did that?
Yeah, we had an idea of the space. I think Kevin alluded to it, like that we thought that maybe the outdoor industry in general, but definitely trail running was underserved. So that's why we kind of landed on that versus road running. I mean, we saw a lot of great innovation going into road running. It just wasn't necessarily carrying into trail running.
Like carbon.
All of it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, from the foams to carbon to, and it really, to give them credit, spearheaded by Nike. But we were like, look, where can we make a dent and do something meaningful and impactful for the runner? But, we saw it kind of being covered, or it's still, ramping, but in road running. So we're like, okay, let's focus on trail. We also, we just like the outdoors.
I was just going to ask, was that a business decision, or you like it? Like a passion?
We just liked it. Outdoors is just a passion, and not just, I like to trail run, but Kevin does a lot of other stuff as well, backcountry skiing, mountain bike, whatever. But the point is like, we just like outdoors in general, and the mountains. And honestly, I think it's a way our brand will go in the future, bigger than maybe just trail running, but it's still be grounded in the mountains.
Right.
And so that's, as far as the product itself, no, a little bit of that, and we can slightly touch on this because I don't want to go totally off tangent here into Speed Hack, but we did this kind of funny little YouTube show because we couldn't work for a year because we were under non-competes. And so we did that because we were allowed to do that.
Is that why your Instagram handles are both Speed Hack?
Yes.
You got it. Yeah.
And so we did that, and we did a lot of funny things, but some of that, not intentionally, but we learned stuff as we did that. And they were kind of, people say now they're breadcrumbs that we laid, but we didn't really intentionally.
It wasn't
do
like
that.
genius the whole time?
No, we didn't.
We'd love to say it was all carefully
just claim
planned.
it,
It
No.
wasn't. Yeah, we'll let people think that.
Yeah.
But it was really, again, okay, we have a year off. We can't work, but we want to stay
in the industry.
Involved in the industry. We want to keep current and, kind of keep your knife sharp sort of thing. So we just decided to get out of our comfort zone and get in front of a camera and make a YouTube channel, which was, neither one of us are really like that.
I got to see you without a beard on YouTube.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of stuck around now for a while.
When I first saw it, I was like, wait, is that the same? Is that the same Kevin?
I know. And
we got
it makes me look smarter.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
Part
started,
of the brand.
Yeah, exactly. Now we've kind of got the iconic looks going, so we can't change. The Speed Hack just wound up being a really good way for us to, get back into cutting apart product, getting familiar with the new foams, new materials, new construction stuff that when you're an executive at a company, you're just not doing a lot of that. You've got people to manage, and you've got deadlines and expectations, and those expectations aren't, you're in the sample room making stuff. And though we both have that drive, that's how we work, it's our process. So I think we kind of discovered that through Speed Hack again, rediscovered that. Like, this is critical to how we make stuff and how we make good stuff. And so we learned a lot, and then when it came time to actually sit down and create the first shoe, it kind of just came out. It was just a real obvious assembly. It was what's the best. We broke it down into functional areas: cushioning, traction, propulsion, fit. How do we optimize each one of those and use the best things that we've learned about through our careers? And that was a really new way of working. And we hand built the models, and we were making the models like what should the proportion be. We were cutting up Michelin mountain bike tires to make the outsole, which really led directly to the look of the final outsole. So it was really kind of a very organic process that started with something that we didn't really know was going to lead us.
We just kind of made it. Like, we didn't. The sketch came almost after the
the actual
100%.
product. Interesting.
Yeah, we didn't design it on paper or in 3D. It was very much out of laying pieces across a last or across our foot and figuring out locations and fine-tuning with our partners.
Yeah,
So
we worked
Michelin,
with-
Michelin's our outsole partner, and they had some input when we showed them initial designs.
Same with BOA.
BOA, very much so, with the wrap system, the fit wrap. They're experts. We had ideas. They helped us tweak them and bring them to life. So we are collaborators big time. One thing that brands don't do really well is collaborate.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think, again, we learned. Like, we thrive off that. We love that. We want to work with partners and make ourselves and our products better. So That's also something we learn in our consulting.
What did that feel like going from, to your point, kind of managing people and, sort of executives in these big corporations and, a totally different dynamic of a job, really. You're managing people and, sitting in boardrooms and whatever, to then going and I'm going to call it playing, for a year. But I think there's so much importance to that. When I quit my corporate job, first thing I did is I sent myself to Digital Summit in Dallas because I just wanted to immerse myself in the digital marketing space again. I wanted to feel creative again. I wanted to, live in that world, even though I'm walking around, paid my own way there. I'm a no man. I've got no brand, no company. Everybody else is like doing their, and I'm like whatever, and taking notes on my, my sheet of paper. But it immersed me back in it, and it reinvigorated my passion for that industry. And so I'm just kind of curious, knowing that you had to have the year, which by the way too, kudos for doing it right, so to speak. It's another thing that our stories sort of parallel with, making sure that we're, starting new businesses and doing it the right way with ethics and things like that. But what did that feel like going from executive, managing people space to speed hacking, for lack of a better term? And, I'm sort of envisioning, young millennial YouTubers cutting up shoes and playing a little bit. But there's such, I think, importance to that process. But I'm also kind of just curious what that transition felt like from a job perspective.
I mean, I don't know. For me, it kind of felt like going back in time because that's kind of what we did in school.
Back to your roots?
Yeah, back to like college, because we were like, that's how we, we'd cut stuff up, we'd create stuff, we'd build stuff, refine it, sketch. So to me, it just felt like going back. I mean, we were executives at Under Armour. I will say, though, we were still designing. So it's not
cool.
like we stopped designing.
Yeah.
So that's probably a unique thing compared to...
I was going to say, I think that's because we kind of forced that.
Non-negotiable. Yeah.
I don't think they want... I think given a choice, there were people who didn't really want that. But I think we kind of felt like that, hey, we have to do that for who we are and how we work.
Yeah, and how we work. I mean, that's how we set... In my case, that's how I would set creative direction through designing still. So it's a little different. So we didn't totally lose that, but yeah, I just felt for me like going back to the roots a little bit of what we were trained to do.
Right.
Way back when.
And I would just add it was pretty cathartic too, because leaving Under Armour or any probably large corporation where you've got a job with fairly high stress or expectations and managing a team is like there's a decompression process that happens after you leave, and it takes a few months to kind of realize like, okay, like this is leaving my body and I'm done with that and moving on to something else, and diving into something like Speed Hack and working together was really helpful in sort of having a new focus and kind of allowing that stuff to get in the rearview mirror and gain a perspective on it and kind of learn from it rather than feeling stressed about that thing. So it was.
And what year was
good.
this? What year did?
2019. We both
Speed
left.
Hack.
And then 2020 is when Speedland was officially officially a company.
We officially,
April or May of 2020.
we officially started development in April or May of 2020.
Something
and
like
then
that.
at like 2021 we started selling
We
products.
launched. So basically 12 months later we launched.
Yeah. So product has only been out for 3 years.
Right.
How does that feel? Most small businesses don't make it past the 3-year mark. We're at year 4. And actually, speaking of stress, walk me through year 3 of a entrepreneur or business owner compared to the stresses of the corporate gig. I know we had that year of decompression, like you mentioned, which is so important. Mm-hmm. But at least my experience from a business owner perspective, highs are high and lows are low. I mean, here we are. It's Saturday midday and we're just working away. It was just business as usual for you guys, it felt like.
Yeah, I would say with this, it's a lot more stressful. The highs can be a lot higher and the lows can be a lot lower. Yeah. And I would say on the corporate side, it's definitely, you obviously still have stress, but it's totally different stress. And the job is so, when you're talking, once you're at a certain level, the job is so different from you might be leading a team of, let's say, 150, 200 people.
Right.
Presenting to them, moving kind of where you're going to go. With this, it's just us.
Yeah.
So we can make decisions a lot quicker. We can go a lot quicker, but we're also here, on Saturday getting stuff done today.
You're doing all the jobs,
Yeah.
So it's that classic graph, the pit of despair that entrepreneurs go through, and it's not just one pit of despair. It's
There's
sort of
many.
it's a cycle,
Yeah.
right? And it's like you have those highs where you're like, oh, people love the product, or an athlete does well in a race, or you get good customer feedback, or whatever it might be that's positive and makes you feel good about your life decisions. And then other moments happen where you're like, man, what am I doing?
We have no idea what we're doing. Yeah.
And it's a small business, so sometimes it feels really precarious. You're like, oh my God, is this going to be the end of things? And it isn't. And I think it's great to have two people, because you can talk each other off the cliff. You're not usually both in the same pit of despair at the same time, so you can kind of try to talk each other up, and so it helps a lot.
That old saying, it's never as good or as bad as
you
think.
It is.
Yeah,
and I'm guilty for the sky's falling. My business partner often will be like, take a deep breath.
I would say year 1, year 3 is a lot more, because there's just more product and there's more expectations on the line. Year 3 is a lot more stressful than year 1.
Yeah.
Year 1 is not stressful at all. Now, it was probably in year 1 it was stressful.
It felt like it.
Yeah, it felt stressful. Looking back now, I'm like, that was not stressful.
Right.
That was, we were building.
You don't know stress.
You don't know stress, and so it just ramps. And I would anticipate that year 5 or 6 are going to be a lot more stressful than year 3 right now. And unfortunately,
right.
But it'll probably be a different stress point than what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, because does it still feel precarious? I mean, or is the business to a point now where at least you've got a good product, you've got good athletes, good customers.
The brand doesn't feel precarious. There's things that happen that feel precarious. The momentum of the brand and what we stand for and what we're building doesn't feel precarious. But there are moments of certain things that happen where you're like, okay, that we have to deal with this now.
Right.
And I think neither one of us take any of it for granted, so you just kind of almost want to have a little bit of that feeling that where like you don't say, oh well, we have these customers, we don't have to worry about them, we have to get more customers. Like you got to take care of everybody, make sure that you're meeting expectations, the products, if it's great now, that it stays great at the same level. I think we've all seen brands that we started out and we loved, and then over time things happen, and all of a sudden it's not the same brand, or the product quality suffers or something. And so we're very aware of that trend and working hard to avoid that. And it's a bit like parenting in some ways, in that like there's a new challenge at each phase, and there's a new phase every 6 months.
Right.
And so it's a new set of stressors. You go from crawling to walking, and like, oh my God, now I got to keep track of this kid all the time. And a business is similar. Like, what distracted you or stressed you at one moment is different in the next, and you kind of have to roll with it. And because we're doing all the roles, it could come from anywhere. Is it going to be supply chain? Is it going to be development? Is it going to be logistics? And I think anybody listening who knows us is going to laugh at us talking about logistics and
legal
and all that stuff.
Couple of creatives.
It's not. Yeah, it's not our area of expertise, but you can learn it. It's not rocket science, and we can get help, and we do get help on these things when we need to. But to answer the question, it's kind of, you just don't know where that next stressor is going to come from, and you got to be agile, and you got to use each other to try to manage the stress and the workload.
Yeah, we have to look like we're always looking. I mean, we always had to do this our entire career, but you always have to look basically 12 to 18 months out as far as product goes. So, like, while we're dealing with maybe a stress point that might be current, we're still working on product that's 12 to 18 months out, so that never really stops, right? And we can't not stop that, because then we won't be ready.
Right. Which is so difficult to balance. It's like you've got to deal with today's problem while planning for 18 months opportunity.
Yeah.
And, like, how does the energy get divided, and how do you
because
focus on all
because
that?
we're a small business and we're fairly focused right now, our opportunity in 18 months is actually could be quite a bit different and bigger than the opportunity today.
For sure.
Which so
if you
we
don't
look quite different than some other businesses maybe
right.
in 18 months.
With the caveat that today's problem still has to be solved that the 18-month opportunity is. We were just seeing this extra layer of QC checking for the next round of shoes before they ship, and it was so fun. It's so cool for me to see kind of that behind the scenes. You see the your guys' big athletes and ambassadors and all the hype and social media and people unboxing their shoes and stuff like that, but you forget that there's a small business hand checking all, QCing everything before they go out, and all of the work and stress and literally blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it. It's so refreshing for me. That's why I've loved my marketing agency side of it, because I get to intimately see, the back end side of businesses and operations and stuff. And I think it's so valuable to understand all that goes into, just getting your product and opening it. I'm curious though, in knowing that we're really 3 years in from product, I want to know what order number one felt like and looked like. Tell me about we've messed around with Speed Hack, we've developed the the prototypes and the product, and we're ready to go to market. Walk me through that phase. What was the first version like? First rollout, first sale. What are the emotions? How did everything look and feel? For sale number one.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big build-up at the time, because we had the product and we had been testing it, and we had Liz and Don were kind of our first OG athletes.
Yeah.
And we had gotten good feedback from them. We'd made adjustments to the product based on their feedback, and we felt pretty good about where we were with the product. And then it's a process of getting the website ready, right? So we're getting, we had a photo shoot with an athlete out in the gorge, and we're getting the shots we needed and product shots done, working with a local group here. And, so you get the website, you get previews of what that's going to look like. And that's exciting. You kind of see your stuff. This is how people are
it feels
see
real.
the brand.
Yeah.
It gets very real. Yeah. And then it goes live, and you kind of, then you wait, and so that first order was exciting. I don't recall that we had
Did you do any sort of big advertising? I mean, we launched the website.
We had build up. I mean, we would. I can't remember the order exactly, but we went on some different podcasts.
Yeah.
And we talked. We had some different connections. So there was a little bit of buzz already before we actually, went into
we knew
selling
some
product.
people in the run review space, and we had gotten some people product, so there was a little buzz. And one of the things that really was buzzy was the price point. Yes. It was $375 for that first shoe, the SLPDX, and that was a shock factor. And I think for some people it was like, they're just pricing something high to get the buzz,
right?
And so it was still buzz. I guess it was still getting the name of the company out there, and under the guise of any publicity is good publicity. We were happy to get it, and frankly happy to talk through where the price came from, because it wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't just setting it. It was our philosophy of using the best foams that we could find, the best rubber we could find, the best closure system, a carbon plate that was, unique properties, uniquely adapted for trail. So all of this, and being a really small company, led to a price point.
It was a pretty small pairage at that point.
And we were small pairs. We did a pre-sale, and I think we sold a couple hundred in the pre-sale, maybe. Might be being generous. So, it was like, okay, we didn't really know what to expect, right? We had no idea. We had no reference for how many should we sell in pre-sale. It was a super high price point.
We just knew we had a compelling product.
Yeah.
Even not even saying we just knew it was compelling. Let's just say that, and so from there.
Yeah, that was very clear to us. We knew we had to have a sharp point, a super sharp point to break through, and we said it often, the world doesn't need another footwear brand. So if you're going to do a footwear brand, it needs to stand for something.
Right.
And we need to be crystal clear about that. So this idea of super high performance, premium product that's, really built around a whole different set of premises we thought it would resonate. We thought the trail runner that we saw, the consumer that we understood, like trail running is kind of a lifestyle. It's your thing. Like if you're doing ultras, like it takes a lot of time to train for it, the nutrition, the psychology.
Yeah, you don't passively run ultras.
It's not like you just decide to run a 50K or 100 miles. Like it is a long time commitment. Some people spend years training for that, or trying to get into some of these races.
Right.
And so we thought that there was this more equipment-like approach that was going to resonate. So developing the product, we felt pretty confident about that. That's our sweet spot, and we've seen a lot of shoes that are feeding a lot of shoes, so we know when something's working and when it's not. And we felt pretty good about it. That's not saying everything was perfect, but we knew that it was different, that there was nothing else like it in the market, and that we were going to find out if there was a customer for that kind of product. That like you don't have to be a pro, you just have to really care about your trail running enough to spend the money on a premium product.
Right. Was there a plan B?
Nope.
All in.
Still isn't.
Nope.
Yeah, no, this was it. I mean, and that was the thing. This wasn't something you could do as a side hustle. Like we had that conversation. I was like, this is not.
Got to be all in.
You kind of got to be all in, and even to the extent now we don't really do any consulting anymore because the business has become all consuming. And beyond the fact that it's really hard to steer a good consulting project from outside, we just need to be all focused on Speedland. So it's it. It's plan A, or we move on to something else.
One of the things I have found fascinating from a marketing perspective, but don't let me put words in your guys' mouth. This is an assumption from my seat, so correct me if I'm wrong. But first of all, I feel like the brand has been positioned incredibly well in terms of just if you look at how really infant the brand is, the brand equity I think outweighs the longevity in business. So that you have clearly done something very right in terms of brand positioning and building that brand equity. But the go-to-market strategy with the new model runs and the way that you guys have partnered with athletes and then the design side of it and these limited run releases is fascinating to me on a few levels. One is I feel like you're definitely leveraging overlapping spheres of influence with the athletes and that side of it, and obviously the community component of it I think is fascinating. And we talked a little bit about Cam Hanes and where that sphere has grown into off camera, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. But I'm curious, I'm gonna call it almost intentional scarcity, planned scarcity, and I don't know if that's even a safe assumption or not, but it from a consumer side of it, for somebody who's just been a fan of your product and a fan of your brand, I was messaging you on Instagram wondering when the new PDX would come out, and I had missed it by a week, and I was like, gosh, dang it, and it creates this like really strong desire to make sure that you get the next run. And for those of us that run a lot, by the time a new one's available, we've run through, our first pair. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I think that that's such a fascinating. I'm interested in that approach from a marketing perspective. I'm assuming there's also though some layers of product quality and manufacturing and things like that involved with it too. Has that been intentional though from day one to say, hey, we're gonna have these limited releases, and where did this idea come from to partner with athletes for these design, and I apologize if my terminology is not correct, but the new model, new release design things. It's just
I mean, we just wanted to give everything we did purpose, right?
Purpose.
So instead of just doing, a lot of brands will just do a bunch of shoes and they'll do a bunch of colors and they'll just release it to the market, but there's no story behind any of it. And so for us, we just knew that the story had to be there and the purpose had to be there.
Love that.
And so that goes for us. It always went right back to the athlete at the center of everything we do. And so basically everything we do goes back to an athlete for the most part, and we tell their story through that product. And that then gives the product meaning, it gives us a reason to do it. We definitely aren't being intentional on the scarcity, if I'm honest. Like, that comes down to just trying to make sure that everything's, walk before we run type of thing. And it also comes back to it comes back to a lot of factors, right? It comes back to capital, how much you can do. So we weren't trying to be intentional in that way, but each product we do is almost its own. There's this, when you look at other things like basketball, and there's signature product, right? Just the new Kobe, the new LeBron, the new whatever. We kind of have not intentionally taken that model, but we've kind of done that for trail running, or for running, let's say, because it's really not done in running even. So we think that's a pretty good place to be, I would say, how we move forward. But I think, because we do get customers who, kind of frustrated, think we're being intentionally small. We're not. We're just trying. We can only make so. We are a small company. We can only make so many. We would like to make more, I think. It's just we have to do it in the right way, and we have to be responsible when we're doing it, right? Because like we were talking about before, if there's any kind of a problem, that would not be
one chance at a first impression.
Yes.
Yeah. I would add just a couple things. One was this. We used the language of a commission, and that came from Singer, Porsche, and they each car they build is a commission. It's the Hong Kong commission or Santa Barbara commission, and they're all unique. And we like that language of getting away from the seasonal business that footwear tends to be. Oh, what's the new colors for spring 24,
for this year? Yeah,
fall 25, and I know we were both tired of that bullshit, and it's redesigning product before the first one has hit the market, and all of this kind of relentless product flow that leads to bad decisions and leads to, like a shoe, the fourth version of the shoe not being better than the third version of the shoe, and like stupid things like that. And so we're not seasonal, and everything is built with an athlete's input, and it's a good story, and the scaling is just the other part that we're small and being careful with. We don't, like, big brands have outlets,
right?
And so if something doesn't work or whatever, it just quietly goes to the outlet, and from
mark
there
it down
knows
and
where it goes. And we, again, we just don't like that. We want to build, and we want to satisfy as much demand as we can without having a bunch of excess inventory. And admittedly, we haven't found exactly that right balance, because demand is still growing, and our ability to buy more shoes from the factory maybe isn't growing quite as fast. But it'll get there, and at some point we'll find the right partners who can help us accelerate. But that's a tricky dance too. You start talking private equity or venture capital or other types of money, and now you've got partners, and now you've got a different set of expectations. Now we have a board of directors,
and grow faster.
And so we're not adverse to that. It just has to be the right group of people who understand this space, because this isn't tech. This isn't a dump some money in and get 10x.
Right, we have to make a
3
product.
years. This is like product and manufacturing and high-end product, and even within footwear manufacturing, not every factory can or wants to make this type of product. So, we'll get there. We're definitely hearing customers and understand very well that frustration. If you love the shoe and then you want to come back to it and it's not there, like that sucks. And so we'll fix that. It's just part of growing as a small brand.
I think, and I don't know if this is the plan or not, but I had heard you guys. I think you were talking on Cameron Haynes' podcast about the PDX being kind of a ongoing, that will always sort of be reordering, and then these signature series or these commissions, which that to me seems like a really great way of balancing that. You can always get Speedlands if you need them, but you still get that excitement and that intensity for the commissions. Because I have to consider if the fact that we keep running out is contributing to the increase in demand, though. Like the chicken or the egg, in reality. And so maybe some balance of that wouldn't be a terrible, a terrible thing.
That's right. I think that allows us to keep the commission special and tell a great story and highlight our athletes, which is definitely something we love, telling their stories. They're all amazing athletes and have really interesting stories. So the more we can get that out there, I think it's really unique and great. But finding a way to keep steady inventory makes sense for us, even at this stage. So it's really just figuring that out, and that's in the works.
And it's so smart because the PDX is obviously the brand colors, and I'm personally drawn to the bright you know, the bright. That's why I've got the bright blue ones on right now.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We can't win with that, right? The green, we love it. A lot of people do, but there's people who, you know, just don't want to rock a all over bright green shoe, and then you do a black shoe, and it's too boring. It's just a black shoe, you know. So we know this cycle really well, and ultimately we just make those decisions and we kind of live with it.
Yeah.
And I think if you love the shoe, you're gonna buy it,
right?
Kinda, you know,
regardless of the color.
Yeah, and we don't say that glibly, like we're not listening. Like we'll keep them as fresh as we can, but it's kind of finding that middle ground of that constant shoe that we're going to keep in stock should be a color that most people can wear.
Yeah, or bright green.
Yeah, or bright green. You just deal with it.
Yeah, so almost all the time I wear, you know, either black or gray T-shirts and jeans. That's kind of my day-to-day work attire. So whenever I'm running, I try to get as bright as I can.
Yeah.
So I run in like bright pink hats and you know, bright blue Speedland shoes or whatever it might be. But
it works great out in the mountains. I mean, and when you're at a race and you're watching people from far away and you pick out a bright shoe, you can see where those colors work really well, and a black shoe just kind of disappears.
It's tough. Yeah,
we like the brights too, and we try to keep it fresh that way.
I ran my first 100-miler at the end of March, and I wore one of Yellow Runners, her yellow hats.
Sally's hat.
And my wife could see me, you know, she'd be looking through binoculars, like trying to figure out how close we are to the aid stations and whatever, and the yellow hat made a big difference.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're trying to see your runner coming into an aid station, you want those hints.
My vote is that you guys stick with the bright, you know, bright, and I know that my vote's probably the most important, so we'll know that'll be
top of the list.
Yeah. I carry so much weight around here, but I love that idea that you just mentioned about stories and, you know, the connection with the athletes. I want to hear more about that and how the athletes are involved in, you know, the design, the production. I know that there's a fair amount of even testing that the athletes are involved with. Tell me more about that story side of it and the athletes' involvement in the commissions.
They're involved in every not production, but they're involved in every part of the testing, to the creative direction, to the look and feel, to you name it. They're right from the beginning. So we'll get an initial product going based off of like what they want, and sometimes it's a reaction to what we don't have, but then we'll get an initial prototype. They'll start testing it. In the meantime, we'll also be talking about like what's significant to them, what do they want on the product, functionally what do they need on the product. You know, you have the Silverton in front of you there. That one, you know, from the beginning has been going back and forth with Avery. So he's informing what he wants. There's a reason why it has, you know, a cuff to it. There's a reason why the BOA is a little bit different on that product than on our previous products. It's all feedback that's directly from him. So we let him drive that. Now he's not the only one testing it.
Sure. We
have some other athletes, and we have a full ambassador team as well that we use for testing. But he's let's just say the leader of the testing, and he's informing it, and then we're kind of cascading, getting other inputs as well as ours. But there's a reason why it has that certain graphic on there. That's directly from him. The way it looks with the colors is directly from him. Even sometimes the compounds that we use can be derived directly functionally from where the terrain and the region. So Liz Canty is a good example of that. She had the second commission, the HSV. We used a stickier rubber on her because she was dealing a lot with limestone. At that time, she was living she's in Colorado now, but she was living in Alabama, in Huntsville. And she was dealing a lot with limestone and slippery rocks, so she needed a grippier compound. So we changed the compound on the HSV is different than the compound on the original SLPDX for that reason. So those are like little tweaks, and then we added like for her, she needed it to be Gator compatible, so it had Gator compatibility on it as well. And then it had a lot of little details like the tattoo that there's a little like hidden details like the tattoo she has, like those are on on the product, but you kind of have to know that the backstory there, and then it's just all those little touches.
And we created videos like Liz, we had a video that sort of, showed her running in Huntsville, and she talked through the tattoo. And so, we want to bring those stories to, in the past we've done, short videos, put on the website to kind of give the athlete a little bit of a voice and a story in there.
So we'd like to do more of that when we can. I mean, we kind of look at brands like Rafa as an example, like what they're doing, what they have done in cycling in the past. Like, the stories almost become as important as the product.
100%.
And so we'd like to kind of do that for trail running to a certain degree. Products, all for us, because we're such a product, we're product creators, that product's probably always going to be at the top of our list. But storytelling and that's right there, below it. So we want to create more videos and have more media and do that kind of stuff as well. When we can.
Yeah, and I think I do a presentation on humanizing brands and the power of storytelling, and I've kind of got a personal philosophy that people are desperate now for authentic connections online and with brands, and we're consumers. I think the behavior has evolved so much now where we don't want to get sold to anymore. We want to feel good about the purchases we make, and that's one thing I've noticed with your guys' brand and some of it I think is definitely the athletes, but some of it's your customers too, is there's I don't know, a genuine community being built around Speedland that is just so fun to see. And I think a lot of it's the way that you guys have approached the bit. I mean, the fact that you're willing to sit and podcast with me is, on that list, but showing up to the events and having the storytelling side of it with the athletes and things like that, it's so attractive. I think it's so, it's such a powerful way to market the product and the brand because it's meaningful and it actually impacts.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I think but most successful businesses in our space started that way.
Right.
People just don't remember they started that way. Even the huge, the Nikes and the Under Armours of the world, right? Like, Phil was selling stuff out of the back of his car at the track meets. Kevin Plank was in locker rooms, with the gear, showing like why you need to wear this shirt. Like that's what we're trying to kind of do. Like when we show up at a race at Hard Rock or Cocodona or anything, like we're there, have to experience it, have to talk about product, have to support, partly to support our athletes. But that I think that's what all these successful businesses that people see. The people just forget that's how some of these businesses started because they're so far away from it now. And so, that's the trick, right? Don't lose that.
I was just going to ask that.
You grow.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's who we are, and what's really important for us in the brand is that authenticity. Like this isn't a manufactured thing. We brought our career and our expertise into this, and we care about what we're doing, and we're accessible. We're not, some giant corporation. People text us all the time or DM us on Instagram, and it's great to be integrated with that community, to listen to what people are saying, positive or negative. We get a lot of hype, which is awesome, but we also get people giving us, good feedback, which is super helpful too. So it's just a really organic, natural part of our process too.
Speaking of the feedback, because I can tell now I'm talking to some creatives, and I work with creatives, and my philosophy is always to, give them a little bit of direction and then get way out of the way and let, creatives do their best. But also there's, in my marketing space, we run into sometimes some dilemmas with like separating the person from the thing that they created, and feedback was not a personal attack and whatever. And then I relate to it from a business ownership perspective. Like if I get a negative review, it is devastating. I mean, it like crushes my soul. So I'm curious because you guys are, business owners and creatives. I mean, you are as close to this product as can be. I mean, literally you couldn't be closer to it. What is you worded it well, feedback, but I think a lot of it's probably critique and, when you're getting the less than good, good messages out there, how are you able to sort of still focus on the positive and the mission so to speak, and not get too tied in with, because we're not going to please everybody. And I'm just kind of curious what that feels like, colliding the worlds of creativity and business ownership.
Well, I think one thing we know, we can always get better. I mean, even when we think we've put out a really good product, at the same time, it's not perfect. Like, there's always things that can be better.
It's not perfect?
Yeah, and we don't always know what those things are, right? So sometimes, a lot of times, there's a lot of truth to that critique or feedback, right? So then we have to go back internally, like, discuss it. That's why it's great to have partners, because we can go back and forth about it and say, okay, that actually is true. We need to see how to deal with that. I mean, it hits hard, though. I mean, we're as creatives and as creators, like, yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, you just have to filter it. You have to know, and you have to know, like, this is just one part of the journey, and we got to keep going, right? So we can't, like, just stop and, like, kind of just get all sad about, something. We got to, okay, how do we fix the situation, and keep moving forward? I guess that's the key, is, like, just keep moving forward.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a question of separating kind of the emotional from the rational, right? It's easy to have that emotional response, like, oh man,
they didn't like
I
it.
failed them, or and then you kind of have to step back or have that conversation or figure out, okay, objectively, what can we do, and is this a one-off, or are we seeing a string of the same feedback? Do we have, and is it a manufacturing issue? Is it a design issue? And I think that we do that pretty naturally. We kind of, come to grips with, hey, this is something we got to address, and we figure out a solution path, or like, okay, it didn't work for this person. Simple, we refund them or send them a new pair if it was something that failed. It comes to another one of our tenets, which is just hyper customer service.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna, especially at this stage, we're gonna over-index on trying to make that work for somebody if we can. And sometimes it doesn't work. There's, a unique aspect to our construction where it's a booty fit. It doesn't have a tongue and lacing. If you have a really low volume foot and you have to crank that boa down, that booty might fold up, and those people, we just know it's not going to fit them well. Doesn't mean we're not making adjustments and trying to improve that, but there's no way to make everybody happy, so you just kind of have to say, sorry, it's not working. It's not going to work for you, and that's the reality of the situation. I think as long as you're straight, we get some surprised looks sometimes when we put shoes on people's feet a lot, and then you can tell right away, like, it's just not going to work for you.
Yeah.
And people are surprised, and we're not pushing the product. Like, it's not for everybody. We want to make sure it fits you well, first of all, and then that it feels good to you, second of all, because the irony of this whole thing is we do all this work hoping that shoe will disappear on your foot and you forget about us.
Yeah.
Because that is the highest compliment, especially in an ultra. If you're thinking about your feet, it's probably because something's wrong.
It's a problem.
Right. And so we hope to have you not think about us when you're in the middle of your runs.
Right. Yeah.
So
I'm just kind of curious. I just think it's interesting, though, because I have to imagine that the good feedback, the positivity fuels you, and that balance of, like, letting yourself feel the good stuff, but sort of a barrier, I don't know, like, you can keep kind of building the momentum and choosing what gets your attention and what gets your energy. Because I'm curious, what does it feel like when you see, because now especially with, and we talked a little bit off camera, Cameron Haynes' sphere of influence, and now the type of people that have Speedlands on is
changed.
Yeah,
it changed overnight.
You see a photo of Jelly Roll,
right,
with walking a 5K in Speedlands. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. What does that feel like to see your brand, your product in these, I don't know, bigger spaces, or these places that you didn't anticipate, early on? Because I would have to think that that's good momentum. And
it's great.
We're super grateful for that. Yeah. That stuff happened, and it's kind of a pinch yourself moment. You're like seeing David Goggins talk about the shoe, and or you're seeing Bert Kreischer talk about plantar fasciitis with the shoe, and you're kind of like, well, that's interesting. How did this come about? And it's all wonderful. it's just kind of one
Does
of
that
those
feel
things.
surreal when
Yeah.
you're? I mean,
No-
and
no
and do
doubt.
you guys get you probably get exposure to that the same way the rest of us do, right? You just
Yeah.
see it on social media, or
Yeah.
it's not like they alert you that.
No, it's not arranged. It's not paid for. It's not anything that's scripted by any means. So we find out somebody sends it to us on social media, or that's usually how we find out.
Yeah, I mean, most of our marketing just is on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not doing like this, placement with.
There's no like subtle,
No,
under the table
no,
influencers
no,
happening.
no.
Or,
I mean, that not for us. That hasn't happened at all.
No.
All of that's been super organic. So it's, kind of shocking. And
does that feel surreal
Yeah.
when you see that stuff?
yeah, for sure.
It does. I mean, to be honest though, I mean, like we've been working not on our brand, but in this industry for a long time. So some level of this
Is normal to
is
you?
normal to me at least, and to Kevin, I think, where we've not to sound a bit strange here, but like we've been fortunate enough to have our products on a lot of high level, let's say, athletes
Yep.
through the years. So this is a little bit different sometimes when you're talking about maybe somebody that's coming from an actor or from a different
musician or wherever,
something.
yeah.
But it's a similar feeling, when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that like they're knowing, they're getting a lot of eyes on the product, So yeah, it's great. We're totally grateful, but it's not totally foreign to us.
Right.
I mean, it does feel like we've had that kind of experience, I guess, through our career.
Yeah.
On some level.
Is there a different level of? I mean, I would assume there's a different level of connection to it though now that it's
sure.
Speedland.
Oh yeah,
No,
because
that-
it goes right back to us.
Yeah.
That part is.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that recently, where, Kevin Plank used to say like, treat every dollar like it's your own dollar, or treat the work like it's your company. And I think you don't know what that means until you have your
do.
own company.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's again like being a parent. You kind of know what it's like. You can anticipate some of that, but you don't really know what it's like until you're in it.
Right.
And so those moments, like, it's great to see, Figo or Rooney in your stuff, or Usain Bolt, or, like these high-level athletes at the highest stages possible, wearing product that you're connected to. Amazing. It's definitely different when it's your brand.
Yeah.
And you're seeing people
And the risk that you
choosing-
took.
Yeah.
You're
knowing every little
Your-
detail of how that happened, or figuring it out, piecing it together later, like, oh man, Cam must have given those guys shoes. And, so it's pretty interesting, and much more personal, and maybe meaningful in a way because of that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
surreal in that way, even if it's not totally unexpected. It's still kind of an interesting series of moments.
Yeah, I just have to think that that's got to be, because my brand is usually behind the scenes. We market for companies, and we're never really like, I don't know, like I'm never going to see my brand, go viral or anything like that. Maybe, but I love when I get to see my work out there or getting shared or whatever. And I can't imagine just the feeling though of, when the brand is attached to it too, how cool that must be when it's a physical, a physical thing. I'm curious from the partnership side of it.
Yeah.
Tell me about the dynamic of the partnership. How do you guys complement each other? How do you butt heads? How do you, tell me about what that's like having, because I know you guys have been working together for decades, but obviously once it's your own thing, things get a little bit more stressful and intense in that way too. But tell me about the partnership.
I mean, I guess on some level, like we have pretty strong overlapping skill sets, which is great. And then there's probably a side that I'm a little stronger on some, and Kevin's a little stronger on the other. So the overlapping is great because we can do a lot of the same stuff, and divvy up that work.
Yeah.
So that actually works. I think sometimes they say, oh, you want to have completely different skill sets. I don't know, because like in our case, like we can go to a production line in, wherever, and we can both look at it at different times because we have that skill set. On the differences, I've spent most of my career probably more on the inline creative direction design side, and Kevin spent most of his career on the innovation, let's just say design but engineering side as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you also have a degree. He has a degree from Brown in engineering. So, and we both went to the same design school as well. So that's where I say, like, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
But then, on some level, there's more of an innovation side there, and there's more of maybe a creative direction, look and feel side on mine. And I say that all saying that he's still a designer and designs product, and I can still look at any engineering drawing
and get it
and have feedback and make the correction. So it's really like there's a lot of blurry lines.
Right.
I don't know, and beyond, like, we'll debate stuff.
I was just going to say, are we always getting along? Are there things that
the
we're...
vast majority of the time, I would say
Yeah.
yes. I mean, we have differences of opinions, but it's usually pretty easy to resolve it. It becomes pretty clear that there's a better perspective, or
a lot of our stuff ultimately goes back, at least at Speedland, goes back to function.
Yeah.
So eventually the function is what's going to win out. Like,
right.
Of course we want it to look good and do all this other stuff, but we're not going to compromise the function of the product. So that is really an easy one for us, where when you're at a bigger brand, unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Sometimes other things are a higher priority.
Yeah. And so that, like, if he's an innovation at a big brand and I'm at creative direction, there might be actually a little more of
friction
and butting heads, because, like, I have to get something to look a certain way,
and he needs it to work a certain way.
He needs it to work a certain way that he's been working on for 3 years, and I'm like, yeah, but we gotta, like, it's gotta look this way because this is what maybe the CEO is saying to me. So that's actually a little trickier, honestly, because you're dealing with a lot of other inputs.
Right.
With us, it's just back and forth, and ultimately the function's what's going to win out. And actually, the other only input we have outside of us is the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like the tiebreaker for us, because they can just come in and say, no, I like this.
This
and
one's,
both of us are like, well, let's go that way then.
And I think we have the same vision for the brand as well. Like, it's more important for the brand to be a hyper performance, stand for something rather than scaling it to be giant. Like, we want to make a living, and we would, eventually, we'll grow and hire people. But I think it wasn't, hey, we got to scale it to this size. We never had a conflict on the business itself. It was like, this is how we're going to do it. It's going to be built around athletes, and we're going to tell good stories, and we're going to make product that's that's elevated over what else is in the market, and the brand will grow to the size that it needs to grow to.
Wasn't there you just reminded me, because there's on the poster upstairs where I was just looking at, one of those pillars is we're only something to the extent of, like, we'll only make a change if it's better.
Yeah.
Only improve.
Only make product if it's better.
Yeah,
there
that's
we
right.
go. Yeah,
that's right. So that, again, that's another.
Like, we don't want to put out, like, a lot of people ask us to put out a road shoe, right? We get asked that all the time. We'd love to put out a road shoe if we can do something that's better. So it's
and
like,
bringing that, sticking with that is probably helping with the partnership and really all of those decisions. Though it's like these are defined.
Everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
like,
helps everything.
Everything. People will say, "Oh, you should put out a hydration pack." Okay, love to. If we can make it better.
If
we actually
make it
made
better.
some prototypes.
We made some. We didn't actually, on those prototypes, honestly make it better.
Yeah.
So we stopped.
Right.
We were like, okay.
We had a concept, and we thought it would be better, and it wasn't. So we said, okay, let's shelve that for now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going to continue to happen as long as we're involved with the brand. And people say, oh, you should do this kind of shoe or that kind of shoe, like cycling shoe. Like,
unless we can make it better.
There's a lot of good cycling shoe brands out there, and how would we get, first of all, to completely different market?
If we see the opportunity and
yeah.
it's better, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And how many brands, honestly, when you start to go through that criteria, can you say that about?
None.
Almost
Which
none.
is
There's probably
brilliant.
there might be a few, maybe a few others in very special, specialized areas.
Right.
But for the most part, you can't say that about any big brands because they make so much junk.
Right.
So like that's kind of what we're trying to stay true to, is like just this concept of better and no compromises.
I love that.
That wasn't that the infamous
it was,
Steve Jobs talking to Mark Parker?
He called it crap. Yeah,
he said you're a great company, but you make too much crap.
Yeah.
And if you look at what Apple has done, and I think to a large extent that everything they do is excellent.
Yeah.
And whereas Nike, like Next Percent, and that family of product is clearly the pinnacle of marathon racing shoes, and everyone else is copying. But they make a lot of junk still,
Right.
And So that's just not the business that we want to get into. So
better or not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not Speedland, and so that, we're still just kind of scratching the surface on what we can do better.
You had mentioned those brand tenants, I think is your verbiage on it. Can you go over those? What are those? Do you have those? I have them on my phone if we don't have them, memorized.
we
put you on the spot a little bit.
I think we have them memorized. I mean,
here's the test. How about this?
We'll alternate.
The
first one is athletes at the center of everything we do.
Yeah. And that holds true. I mean, that's been from day one, finding Don and Liz and listening to them and slowly growing that crew, and they're an integral part of our process. Each new shoe starts with one of them, and eventually they all are part of the testing. So that's why we go to the events and why we do what we do.
Which is I think so many businesses forget to listen to their customers.
Oh,
so having the athlete be the center of all things, I mean, what you're doing is you're listening to your customer.
It's not rocket science, but yet the brands get so far away from that. And I think that was one of our major frustrations. Like, you try to get your teams to get with the athletes, and it's like there's a million layers in between the teams and the athletes. And like, we'll schedule an hour in 3 months.
Right. And we might have that in 3 years finally done.
And the best products came out of relationships. Like, Tinker and Jordan, like they had a relationship together, and it's not layers and appointments. It's like Don and Liz are texting us, and Avery's calling us, and like that's really important, and it can't be overstated. And it unfortunately is such a small part of how big brands work that it's like, why have these athlete teams if you're not really going to listen to them?
Right.
And we know this because some of our athletes have said, like, the last brand I was with wasn't listening to my input, so they offered me a lot more money, but I don't want to be with them because I'm more about product development and having people listen to. And so that's the type of athletes that is attracted to our brand.
Yeah.
We're not going to maybe pay them a big salary, and we don't have head-to-toe apparel and lifestyle stuff to go with it. We've got what we think are arguably best shoes in the market, and we've got open
great-looking
minds,
hats.
And we've got some hats and stuff, but I mean, we don't want to be known for the hats at this point. But, yeah, I mean, that's the point. So that athlete thing is number one and really important, and I think our second is we're not going to do anything unless we can do it better.
Yeah.
And that is
That's third one on the list.
Is it?
That is third on the list.
Yeah. Best materials, no compromises, which goes along with better. They kind of cascade. So, we use the best materials, no compromises. So that's pretty self-evident what we're trying to say there.
Yeah, and that's really kind of a product geeky thing. Like, you have a choice of foams, and you could choose a foam that's going to look the same and maybe on the thumb test feel the same, but it's going to cost you half as much. We're not going to use that foam because we know it's not going to last as long. So
the boas are a good example. We use the highest end boa two-way. You can tighten and loosen without popping. So,
right.
Nobody else uses that in the running market, right? But people don't know that because it's like, okay, well, this shoe uses 2 boas. I won't call out who it is, but yeah, they do. But it's not the same boa.
But if you're in the middle of a race and you want to loosen it just a little bit, you can't turn it backwards.
Yeah.
It sounds like a small thing, but I think this customer, and you're talking about races that last 12, 24 hours, retying your shoe suddenly becomes something you don't want to do.
Right.
So you're not going to stop and do it, which means your fit is compromised. Maybe you get blisters as a result.
Yeah.
And so we know that the boa is a better fit solution. So that's a great example of, like, we're going to use what's better. So,
and I think that ties into that idea of product first, and then the price is what it is.
yeah.
Build the best product and let the price be.
That's,
The price becomes what it is.
Yeah.
it's exactly. Otherwise, you start compromising.
Right.
And that's our whole thing. We don't want to compromise. So,
Right. I had these on for 30 hours. We talked about us elite runners. They're I finished in 30 hours and 17 minutes.
It's honestly even more important for, if you're an elite and you're in and out of a 100-mile race in 14 hours, well, that's one thing.
Right.
30 hours?
30 hours. I need my shoes to be comfortable. Yeah.
That's right. So the fourth one is
Hyper,
that we're going to provide hyper customer service. Like, we don't want to have somebody call and get somebody in a foreign country who doesn't know anything about the product. We want, when people call, they're either getting us or they're getting somebody who's intimately familiar with the product, who's probably an ultra runner, who can answer all their questions.
Right.
And if somebody has a problem, like, let us know. We're gonna find a solution that makes you happy. You know, we understand things happen, and we have really great confidence, and we get great feedback on the product lasting a long time. If for some reason somebody doesn't have that, we want to hear about it. You know, we're gonna find a way to make it right. So that's just being human. You know, it's not a giant corporation. You're not throwing a customer service call into a black box. It's coming to us.
Yeah.
You know? So that's something we can do now, and that's something we're going to do to help differentiate us.
And then the last one is giving back to the land.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, we're all about the outdoors, not just beyond trail running, right? Just we're about the outdoors, and so how do we give back? So the way we do that is we do it again. Go back to our first one. Athletes are at the center of everything we do. So we partner with our athletes, and we do local give back every year, where they pick the charity of their choice, and then we give back to that charity through them. So that's the way it's more of like a grassroots approach to giving back versus maybe what a larger corporation would do.
Yeah, it's not a large corporation just giving a big chunk to some organization. It's localized that way, and it's
the people are
not
invested
even coming
in
through Speedland.
Yeah.
It's coming through the athlete. Like, what's important to, you know, Don and where he is, or what's important to Liam and in his area. How can he give back to the organizations that are taking care of the trails, or getting people on the trails who wouldn't normally have access to them, or whatever it might be. Whatever is important to them is important to us, and we let them.
We just kind of want it to be related to our only criteria is that it's related to the outdoors.
Outdoors, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be pretty broad beyond that, yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about what's upcoming. Tell me about what's next.
Sure. So this is the GL platform. So it's
because the
a
GS and then but before
had
that
the
was
SL.
the SL.
So
Got
the
it.
GL,
So this is the third.
GL's the third, and the GL's kind of an in between the two. It's not as low stack as the SL, and it's not as high stack as the GS.
Got it. In between.
It's in between. We've been working with Avery on this. He ran Hard Rock in it last year, so he's been testing it a long time.
He ran in this.
No, he ran in
He ran in a version of this.
But the GL.
Yeah. GL platform.
Thank you.
Yep. He has. So he's been testing it. We've been tweaking it based off his input, and so it still has our drop-in midsole with the removable plate system. A little bit more cushioning underfoot versus the SL. The SL was, I think people liked it for kind of short to middle distances.
Right.
And we really wanted to make a great all-around, all-mountain shoe with the GL. So we're doing two versions of this for the first time. So there's a dual BOA version. Again, the BOA is in a little different location based on Avery's input for this one, and the cuff, the built-in gator, based on kind of all the remoteness of the San Juans and just keeping stuff out of the shoe.
Are these going to be ready before 4th of July weekend?
Nope. Nope. These will be in the fall. Yeah. And again, that's an example where we probably could have gotten this out to the market sooner, but we've been really deliberate in our process of validating it. So Avery gets to a point where he's literally said, "Hey, I think this shoe is perfect for me.
It's ready."
And then what we do is we, because this is a new tooling, we call it the bottom, the midsole, outsole are new. We open additional sizes for our other athletes, so then they can test it as well. So we're listening to one to get it to probably a pretty high level of finish, but then we get Liz's size, and Don runs in it, and Dylan, and we get different terrain and different styles of running, different speeds, and we sort of wait for their input, and then when they say, "Hey, it's great," or as close to great as we can get. We're never going to get it perfect again, but we get it to a point where we feel good about it. That's going to be better than what's out there in the market, and then we pull the trigger. So that's kind of we're in that final validation phase now, and we've done a second version, so it's a low. We know not everybody loves a cuff, so we can do it with the low, and then we're keeping a dual zone fit system, which we feel has really been successful.
Yeah.
We control midfoot, forefoot separate from the heel, but we're doing a strap, a technical strap for the heel fit instead this time, and bringing the price point down.
Awesome.
So again, we're in the process of validating that, making it gator compatible. That's something that we've heard that people liked about the HSV, and so we're bringing that back. So if you don't like the built-in one, you can still have the
The
Gator
traction's
compatibility.
kind of similar to the original SL,
Yeah, so
but
it's
it's
the
a little
longer.
bit wider.
Yeah.
Kind of like the GS. So it's again, it's a true kind of in
between.
In between, yeah. So it should be a great all mountain product.
What's the plan with the PDXs? When are those? Any idea when there's going to be another round of those?
Yeah, we'll have another
Should be next
drop
month.
like kind of mid to late July.
Cool.
Somewhere.
I got to make sure not to miss this one.
Somewhere in there, we'll put it up on our Instagram when they're out there. Yeah. I mean that's kind of our way we communicate. We do newsletters, but we also communicate just directly on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, okay, PDX is dropping now, and so. And then we'll have another GS model come towards the end of the year. Another one partnered with Cam.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
That'll be it's pretty
Yeah, it's looking
really good and really different. So that'll be pretty exciting.
Tell me more.
Yeah,
That's all I get.
That's all I can say. Just it's winterized. Let's say that.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
interesting.
It's different. It's a little different materials and
a
stuff.
little different material mix.
Yeah, way cool. What's next for you guys? What just kind of, when you're looking at the brand, and I have to think that, what a wild ride it's already been. If you're kind of looking to the horizon or goals or, kind of like impacts that you guys want to be making, what's on the horizon personally?
Well, we just want to grow. I mean, we want to grow the brand responsibly and keep adding more products that make sense. And I think as we do that, the dynamic of the company and how many people are part of the company is going to change. So the company is going to go through a little bit of a transformation over the next couple years here. But keep doing the same thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll find a balance of being able to have the platforms in a kind of steady inventory, so people can get it when they want it. Continue telling the commission stories as special drops on top of those, and then as we scale and find the capital to do so, to have multiple models on at the same time. We've kind of done it one at a time.
Yeah.
Giving customers the chance to pick with the GL and the GS and whatever else we do in the future, to have those available makes sense.
Right.
Kind of doing one at a time has been really just a function of our size.
Just the reality of it.
Yeah. So
The demand is certainly there.
it seems that way, and we're really focused on the U.S. right now. We want to kind of get our best practices and get everything really dialed in before we start to think about Europe or anywhere else in the world. But we do think that that's a part of our future.
Right.
Whether it's 2 years from now or 4 years from now, we'll kind of have to see. Again, depends on finding the right partners and capital, but that's kind of what the next few years look like.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for your time. Again, I'd mentioned when we started, I know that this has been an especially hectic week, and I want you to know, from one business owner to another, I know what that means. And so I just really appreciate you guys taking time on a Saturday and letting me pick your brain. But also thank you for what you're doing for the industry. I certainly appreciate, the better or don't build it mentality and, getting me through 100 milers and, who knows how many miles I have on mine. But also I think, your fresh approach to business is refreshing, and I'm loving the storytelling and the community that you guys are building and this amazing brand and all of this stuff kind of coming together. It's so exciting to see, and like I said, I'm kind of fangirling out being here today. So I just really appreciate you guys on so many different levels. And so I do have I have gifts for you guys.
Oh, wow.
These are my Inspire by Example shirts.
Nice.
I'm working on,
Thank you.
making a movement of inspiring people and doing right things. And so I just really appreciate you guys for being part of that, because I feel like I've certainly been inspired from your messaging, the business that you're building, the product that you're putting out there, and all of that great stuff. So I just really personally want to tell you guys how much I appreciate it, and just thank you so much. And I can't wait to see where it goes, and excited to get my hands on more of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming here. It was great to do it in person.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
All right.
Thanks.